Welcome, traveler of the stars. You found your way to a quiet corner of the galaxy, a place far, far away, where worries drift like space dust and dreams shine like twin suns on the horizon. Tonight, you don't need to fight. You don't need to run. There are no missions, no chases, no darkness to resist. There's only peace. You're here to rest, to breathe, to float gently through the Force as stories from across the galaxy unfold like lullabies. This is not a battle between light and dark. It's a calm journey through starlight, a soft retelling of small, forgotten moments before the wars, between the fights, in the spaces where heroes rest and villains pause. Tonight you'll visit Tatooine, not as a soldier, but as a dreamer, watching a young farm boy gaze at twin suns with nothing but longing in his eyes. You'll drift beside two droids, wandering endless dunes, with nothing to guide them but sand, starlight, and destiny. You'll walk quietly through the Jedi Temple, its halls still filled with hope. Children training with wooden sabers, masters teaching lessons through gentle words. You'll feel the stillness before the fall. You'll sit beside Obi-Wan as he watches over Luke from afar, his breath steady, his past heavy, but his presence calm. Just a silent guardian beneath the stars. You'll float beside Leia on a cloud city balcony, her hand resting on the rail, her thoughts somewhere between memory and moonlight. You'll follow Yoda through Dagobah's mist as he stirs a stew and hums to himself. No war, no saber, just stillness. And when the journey winds down, when the stars blur into dreams, you'll find yourself aboard the Falcon, its hum like a lullaby, its crew asleep, its path steady through hyperspace. You might even feel the Force, not as a weapon, but as a breath, a warm presence, a quiet pulse that wraps around you like a blanket. Because in this version of the galaxy, everything is soft, everything is calm. And you are safe. Let your mind wander. Let your body melt into the bed or the couch or the floor. Let each blink become slower. Let your breathing match the stars. Inhale and imagine Naboo's lakes. Exhale and picture the rain on Kamino's rooftops. Inhale again and feel the wind on Endor brushing your face. Exhale and see the northern lights on Hoth, dancing in silence over a snowfield no one visits. Long before the rebellion, long before he was a Jedi, Luke Skywalker was just a boy on a dusty, quiet planet where days stretched long and nights hummed beneath twin moons. This is the part of his story most people forget. Not the battles, not the starships, but the quiet afternoons, the soft winds through Canyon Rock, the low hum of droids fixing vaporators, the smell of oil, the warm buzz of sun-bleached metal. And Luke wasn't a hero. Not yet. He was just a farm boy with sunburned cheeks, a tangled mop of blonde hair, and dreams he didn't have words for. On this evening, he sits alone outside the moisture farm, a small metal stool, a half-repaired speeder part resting on his knee. The tool in his hand is quiet now. He's not fixing anything anymore. He's just staring. The suns are setting again. One orange, one red, both dipping slowly over the dune sea like glowing coins falling into sand. They always set like this together, but separate, balanced. Even when the day felt dull or hard or endless, this part was magic. Luke leans back, his hands behind him, bracing in the warm dust. His eyes scan the sky. The clouds glow soft around the edges. The desert cools just a little. Somewhere, a womp rat scurries. Somewhere else, a bantha groans softly in the distance. But here, on the ridge, it's peaceful. He can hear his own breath. The wind whistles gently over the rocks. The vaporators behind him click in lazy rhythm. He closes his eyes for a moment, and in his mind, he sees the stars. He doesn't know it yet, but one day those stars will be his home. He'll fly among them, leap from system to system, light a saber in the dark. But not yet. For now, he's grounded, and the ground is warm. Inside the house, Aunt Beru is preparing the evening meal. The smell of roasted root and blue milk stew drifts out from a cracked window. Uncle Owen's voice murmurs low. He's probably checking the farm's readings. But Luke lingers outside, as long as the light lasts, as long as the wind is soft, as long as he can keep pretending there's more out there, and maybe one day he'll find it. He stands, brushes dust from his pants, walks slowly up the small slope behind the homestead, his favorite view. From here, he can see beyond the main compound, over the edge of the plateau, toward the endless stretch of sand dunes. The suns are lower now. They kiss the horizon. The light is soft gold and pale peach. It reflects in his eyes. He pulls a pair of binocs from his belt, presses them to his face, and scans the distant rocks. He's not looking for anything in particular. Sometimes he imagines rebel fighters in the sky. Sometimes he pretends a Jedi might wander into view. Tonight, he just watches the wind dance. His eyes are calm. His heart is steady. The ache of wanting more, it's always there. But right now, he's at peace with it, like the ache is a friend. A soft reminder. The suns sink lower. A chill begins to touch the air. Luke zips his jacket, pauses to listen. The wind changes direction, carries with it the scent of ion oil and sand. A familiar smell. Down in the pit, R2 whistles softly. C3PO is explaining something to him, something long-winded, probably about protocol. Luke smiles faintly. The droids have only been here a day or two. They're strange, but comforting in a way he can't quite explain. He walks back toward them slowly, footsteps crunching softly over sand. "Everything okay down there?" he calls out gently. R2 beeps, once a calm, content tone. 3PO responds, his voice echoing through the pit. "Yes, Master Luke, although I do believe your astromech friend is ignoring my concerns about sand corrosion." Luke chuckles. "Don't worry, he's tougher than he looks." The droid whistles again, almost proudly. Luke sits beside them for a moment, letting the silence settle. Only the faint buzz of electricity, the light blinking of circuits. The droids settle down too. Their usual rhythm slows. Luke stretches out on his back, hands behind his head, looking up at the darkening sky. The stars are beginning to appear now, little by little. First one, then another, then a slow flood of pinpricks across the black. He wonders which ones have people, which ones are just dust, which ones hold secrets he's meant to find. Maybe he'll never leave Tatooine. Maybe he will. But for tonight, the stars are enough. He listens to the quiet. The droids stop talking. Even the wind grows still. His mind drifts. He thinks of his father, what little he knows. A navigator maybe, or a pilot. He pictures a tall man in a flight suit, helmet in hand, walking through a ship hangar with purpose. He imagines flying beside him. He imagines what his mother might have looked like. Her voice. Would it have been kind? Would she have sung? Luke yawns. His body begins to relax. The ground beneath him is firm but familiar. His back knows this shape. His shoulders melt into the slope. He watches one bright star move, a ship, maybe, in low orbit. He traces its path across the sky with a finger, then lets his arm fall. The twin suns are gone now. Only their memory warms the edge of the horizon. The desert is cooling. The sky is filling. And Luke's eyes begin to close. In the distance, Aunt Beru calls his name softly, not urgently. "Dinner, Luke." But he doesn't answer yet. He wants one more moment, just a little longer, with the stars, with the silence, with a dream. He lets the wind carry his breath, lets his thoughts drift through the galaxies, lets sleep take him slowly, like a starship leaving orbit. Luke Skywalker, the boy who would become a Jedi, falls asleep on a quiet hill, under the stars of a planet no one believed could change anything. But that night, it was the center of the universe. And in the silence, the Force watched over him, soft, still, and waiting. Luke didn't stay outside forever. Eventually, the desert chill crept deeper, and Aunt Beru's voice grew more insistent, still soft, but no longer ignorable. He stood slowly, brushing fine sand from his sleeves. The droids beeped something behind him, but he only smiled and gave a small nod. The sky was dark now, a dome of velvet dotted with stars. One last glance at the galaxy, and he turned toward the glowing doorway of the homestead. Inside, the lights were low. The hum of the kitchen console echoed softly as Aunt Beru stirred the pot. She looked up when Luke entered and gave him that familiar smile, gentle, tired, kind. "Wash up," she said. Her voice carried warmth that the desert never did. Luke did as he was told. He moved through the curved halls of the home, walls made of stone and clay, touched by time, and the scent of engine oil. He paused near the small mirror above the basin. His reflection looked older than he felt. Tan skin, sharp jaw, curious eyes. Still a boy, but with weight behind the eyes. He washed his hands, dried them with a threadbare cloth, returned to the main room. Uncle Owen was already seated, quietly picking through the daily moisture report on a data pad. He didn't say much. He rarely did. But Luke didn't mind. Dinner was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes from routine. Spoon stew, clinking utensils, the occasional sip of blue milk. Aunt Beru asked about the droids. Luke mentioned R2's repairs. 3PO's rambling. Uncle Owen muttered something about no more distractions and harvest season coming fast. But it didn't turn into anything. Sometimes conversations on Tatooine weren't meant to go anywhere. They were just echoes to fill the room. After dinner, Luke offered to clean up. Beru waved him off. "You've been out all day," she said softly. "Go rest." So he walked back toward his room, past the quiet hum of the generator, stepped into the small space he called his own. His room wasn't large. It didn't need to be. A bed built into the wall curve. A few tools. A shelf with model ships he'd built as a child. Posters curling at the edges. A tiny screen for old recordings. But the thing he loved most was the ceiling. Above the bed, he had painted constellations. Not perfect ones, but ones he imagined were real, dotted with glow paint that caught just enough light to glow faintly when the room was dark. He lay back on the bed, hands behind his head, eyes fixed on the ceiling sky. The droid settled near the door. R2 gave a soft whir, as if sighing. Luke whispered, "Good night, R2." A beep in response, one that somehow sounded like a yawn. He turned off the lamp. Wunk. The ceiling stars came to life. His own private galaxy. His breath slowed. The air was cooler now, but the stone walls held in the warmth of the day. As he drifted, his mind wandered again. He imagined piloting a starfighter, diving into an asteroid field, dodging TIE fighters, flying toward a distant planet no one had ever seen. And just before sleep took him, he imagined seeing his father waiting there, smiling, reaching out. The next morning came not with alarms, but with the soft buzzing of the farm coming alive. Sunlight crept through the carved window, casting orange stripes across Luke's face. He blinked slowly, stretched, sat up. Another day, another circuit to fix, another droid to calibrate. But somehow it didn't feel boring. He dressed quietly, boots scuffing the floor. The droids followed as he stepped into the hallway. R2 chirping something indecipherable, 3PO replying with a tone that sounded like light scolding. Outside, the suns were already high. The sky was clear, a pale, bleached blue that seemed to stretch forever. Luke started his rounds, checking vaporators, testing power levels, tightening panels. He worked with quiet hands, movements practiced, breath even. But even in the routine, he noticed things. The way the wind danced across the sand in spirals, the low whine of distant speeders, the shape of clouds drifting far beyond Anchorhead. Sometimes he'd pause, place a hand on one of the machines, let the warmth soak through his skin. He liked the silence. It wasn't lonely. It was wide. He could think in it, breathe in it. That afternoon, he drove the speeder into town. The engine purred beneath him, sand kicking up behind as the horizon shimmered in heat. The ride was smooth, familiar. The same rocks, the same towers. But Luke wasn't bored. He liked watching the world pass by. He liked wondering what lay beyond it. At Toshi Station, he nodded to Fixer and Kami, traded small talk about power converters, and picked up a box of parts wrapped in canvas. There was nothing new to see, but everything felt like it could change. That was the magic of Tatooine. Boring until it wasn't. Still, until the wind changed. Back at the homestead, he spent the evening fitting a sensor to one of the droids. R2 offered soft whistles of protest. Luke rolled his eyes. "I'm not reprogramming you," he muttered. "Just helping you stop running into walls." 3PO muttered something about thankless work and wandered off. The sun began to set again. Another day gone. Luke stepped out to the ridge again. Same stool. Same sky. The twin suns glowed a little redder this time. The heat shimmered gently. The shadows stretched long. He pulled out a journal, one he didn't let Uncle Owen see. Inside were sketches, starships, planets he'd only read about, faces he imagined from dreams. He flipped to a blank page and began drawing a saber hilt. He didn't know what it would look like, but somehow it felt familiar. He sketched slowly, carefully, the wind brushing his face. Behind him, the homestead lights flickered on. Another night, another meal, another quiet walk to bed. But for now, just him, the wind, and the stars. In the days to come, everything would change. A message, a droid, a hooded man in the desert, a chase, a war. But tonight, none of that exists. Tonight, Luke Skywalker is just a boy in a big, quiet galaxy, watching suns disappear and stars appear. And as the stars grow brighter, he closes his eyes. One more moment, one more wish, one more dream of flying. The escape pod shuddered softly as it touched down on the surface of Tatooine. A whisper of sand billowed around the curved metal shell, swallowing it like the desert swallowed everything. For a long moment, there was silence. No explosions, no lasers. Just the quiet groan of settling sand and the distant howl of a desert wind. Then, with a sharp hiss of air and a mechanical chirp, the door slid open and out rolled a small blue and white astromech droid, R2-D2. Close behind him stumbled his golden companion, arms flailing slightly as he adjusted to the uneven terrain. C-3PO. "Oh, this is just perfect," 3PO muttered, his joints clicking. "We're doomed." R2 beeped something dismissive, his dome turning to scan the horizon. The landscape stretched endlessly in every direction. Endless dunes, faded rocks, no trees, no water, only wind and heat. The twin suns beat down from above, casting shimmering waves across the golden plains. "Where are we?" 3PO asked, no one in particular. "I knew it. I just knew we'd end up in some dreadful backwater system." R2 gave a low chirp and began rolling forward, his wheels kicking up little clouds of sand. "Wait, don't leave me." And so began their journey. Two droids. No map, no master. Just sand beneath their feet and stars far overhead. They moved slowly at first. R2 trundled forward with purpose, his sensors guiding him towards something, even if 3PO had no idea what it was. C-3PO lagged behind, flailing awkwardly with every gust of wind. "This is absolutely ridiculous. I was not built for desert travel. My servos are overheating. And there's sand in my neck." The desert, of course, did not respond. "Ease," it only whispered. Soft grains sliding across ancient stone, winds dancing in little swirls. A low hum, almost musical. R2 paused occasionally, scanning for signs of life. There were none. Just the occasional fossilized ridge, a broken piece of machinery half buried in dust. Footprints, maybe theirs. Maybe something else. The suns climbed higher, their shadows grew short, the heat thickened, but still they walked. Or rather, R2 rolled, and 3PO stumbled. "I should have stayed on the ship," he moaned. "At least there I had a proper recharge station. Here, I'll be deactivated by lunchtime." R2 ignored him. He chirped softly to himself, maybe recording the landscape, maybe humming. After a while, 3PO stopped complaining. His voice grew quieter. His joints moved slower. Even he had to admit there was something oddly calming about the silence. The desert was vast, but not empty. Not really. It was full of space. Room to think. Room to feel small. Room to listen. Somewhere in the distance, a pair of rock pillars stood like forgotten statues. The wind whistled between them. By midday, they found a small ledge beneath a stone arch. A patch of shade. Just enough for both of them. C-3PO collapsed gratefully. I don't care if there are sand people or crate dragons, I'm not taking another step. R2 beeped a short reply and positioned himself beside a slanted rock, his dome rotating to face the horizon. They rested. No words. Just the wind. R2's sensors blinked slowly. 3PO powered down half his systems to conserve energy. His photoreceptors dimmed. His voice went quiet. The suns burned on. Time passed, but slowly, like the planet itself was dozing. Eventually, they moved again. The terrain shifted slightly. Softer dunes gave way to flatter sands. A few more jagged rocks appeared. Faint signs of old movement, tracks long since erased. 3PO perked up just a little. I believe I recognize this formation. We may be nearing a trade route. R2 beeped cautiously. They crested a ridge. And below them in the distance, something moved. A vehicle. Small, brown. And crawling across the desert like a giant insect. A Jawa sandcrawler. R2's dome spun. He chirped urgently and began moving faster. Wait, what is it? What are you doing? Slow down. 3PO scrambled to keep up, stumbling through the sand. I don't trust those creatures, they smell awful and have no concept of manners. But R2 was gone. The droid rolled down the slope toward the approaching sandcrawler. His beeps grew louder, his urgency more animated. The Jawas from their lookout tower spotted him. A moment later, a puff of smoke, and R2 jolted with a loud zap. A restraining bolt, a capture net. He let out one final indignant beep as he tumbled into the sand. And C-3PO, still clambering over a ridge, gasped. Oh no, not again! He hurried down, waving his arms. Wait, I'm with him. I'm highly valuable. Another net flew, and the desert, once again, fell silent. The sandcrawler rumbled softly. The tracks groaned. The Jawas chattered. And soon, both droids disappeared inside the vehicle's dark, dusty hull. Inside, it was dim, cramped, buzzing with strange energy. R2 blinked slowly, scanning the surroundings. The other droids in here were older. Some rusted, some slumped against walls. None of them spoke. 3PO sat beside him, sulking. Well, that went exactly as I expected. R2 gave a flat beep. But I suppose, at least we're not wandering anymore. The sandcrawler rocked gently as it moved. Sparks flickered overhead. Chains rattled softly in rhythm. And somewhere above, the stars began to return. They didn't know it yet. But this journey, the one that felt aimless, accidental, pointless, was about to change everything. Not just for them, but for the galaxy. But tonight, there are no explosions, no chases, no rebellion. Only quiet gears and sand. And the soft glow of R2's sensors pulsing like a heartbeat. 3PO's head tilted, resting gently against the wall. His system entered low power mode. His voice faded. His complaints were done for the day. And even in this strange metal tomb, there was peace. Two droids, side by side, waiting for the next dawn, waiting for the next owner, the next chapter, the next chance. But for now, just silence. And the faint sound of sand against steel. Dent. The sandcrawler rumbled on through the night. Its wide metal treads groaned with every rotation, carving deep tracks in the soft terrain. Inside, the motion was gentle, like the slow rocking of a cradle. The droids inside had long given up resistance. They waited, some in silence, some in flickering sleep. R2D2 stood quietly in one corner of the holding chamber, his dome slightly tilted upward, his sensors dimmed to low power. He didn't speak. He just listened. To the quiet creak of metal around him, to the soft whirring of his own processor, to the occasional chirp of another droid shifting in its sleep mode. Somewhere beside him, C-3PO sat slouched against a wall, arms limp, legs outstretched. He wasn't powered down completely, but he was drifting. His voice for once had faded. And in that dim, metallic quiet, they rested. Outside, the twin moons of Tatooine shone gently across the dunes. The sand looked soft beneath their pale light, a sea of gold and silver ripples, stretching endlessly in every direction. The Jawas were asleep, huddled in piles of cloaks and tools near the command center. Only this sandcrawler moved, silent but determined. It knew the path. It had done this hundreds of times, across the same ridges, through the same canyons, past bones of forgotten creatures and long-buried wrecks. The desert remembered everything, but it didn't speak of it. It only carried the silence forward. Hours passed. Eventually, morning returned. The first sun peeked over the horizon, a thin orange sliver. Moments later, the second sun rose beside it. Tatooine's sky shifted from cool blue to glowing peach. The air warmed, shadows stretched, and the sand shimmered like gold. Inside the crawler, R2 stirred first. His dome flicked on. Lights blinked. A low rising beep hummed from his core. He scanned the chamber again. Same walls, same bolts, same quiet. 3PO slowly activated next. His eyes flickered to life with a faint ping. He groaned as his servos flexed. Oh dear, my backplating is positively misaligned. That ride was worse than a smuggler's freighter. R2 beeped in reply. What do you mean it wasn't so bad? You don't even have a spine. They argued softly, like siblings. But their tone was different now. Not panicked, not frightened, just tired. And calm. Because somehow, even though they were inside a noisy machine, in the middle of an unfamiliar desert, captured by strange creatures, they were together. And that made it bearable. A jolt. The crawler stopped. Gears hissed. Brakes locked. Chains rattled. 3PO flinched. What now? Moments later, the large rear ramp opened. A flood of warm sunlight poured into the chamber, painting the floor in stripes of gold. The Jawas were already chattering excitedly. They dragged droids from the dark one by one. Old units, protocol bots, service models. Then R2, a tug, a beep of resistance, another pull. He rolled reluctantly down the ramp into the morning light. Behind him, 3PO stumbled forward, catching himself on the doorway. Oh, brightness, mercy, my circuits. They squinted into the sunlight. Their optics adjusted. They had arrived at a moisture farm. One small house sunk halfway into the earth. A few vaporators scattered around the compound. A dome-roofed garage, faded stone walls. Simple, but clean. And stepping out from the doorway, a young man, blonde hair, worn tunic, sun-wrinkled smile. Luke Skywalker, C3. P.O. blinked, then straightened himself. He stepped forward, voice suddenly polished and professional. "Good morning, sir. I am C3PO, Human-Cyborg Relations, and this," he gestured to R2, "is my astromech counterpart, fully operational, I assure you, fluent in over 6 million forms of communication." R2 gave a skeptical beep. Luke tilted his head. Something about the little droid drew his attention, something he couldn't explain. But he nodded. "I'll take both of them." And just like that, the journey through the desert was over. The droids had found a home, for now. Later that day, R2 sat silently inside the small garage. A charging cable plugged gently into his side. His systems hummed quietly. 3PO sat across from him, legs crossed like a scholar, relating something about sand-resistant alloy maintenance. But R2 wasn't listening. He was thinking, not calculating, not processing, not analyzing, just thinking. A kind of mechanical daydream. Because in his memory, banks buried deep, was a message. One that glowed faintly every time he tried to rest. A message from a princess. A call for help. A spark that hadn't yet caught fire. But it would. Soon. That night, under the same stars as before, the droids slept in a small side chamber beside Luke's room. Their forms tucked against the wall. Lights dimmed. No motion. No sound. Just the quiet, rhythmic pulse of idle cores. Outside, the desert was alive with moonlight. Winds traced gentle lines in the sand. A lizard scurried along a ridge. A dewback snored softly in its pen. Everything was still. And if one listened closely enough, beneath the hum of machinery, beneath the quiet of the dunes, you could almost hear the Force breathing, waiting, watching, because the story had already begun. And the droids had played their part. Their walk through the desert wasn't meaningless. It was the first step, the first thread, the first breath in a story that would echo across the stars. But tonight, that story sleeps, wrapped in dust, cradled in metal. 2 droids, together, safe, still. Let your thoughts wander with them. Let your breath slow, like R2's gentle pulses, like 3PO's quiet hum. Let the desert rock you. Let the twin moons guide you. Let the silence carry you towards sleep. The droids are at peace, and so are you. There was a time when Obi-Wan Kenobi's name carried weight. A Jedi Master, a general, a legend of the Clone Wars. But now, he was just Ben, a quiet old man living alone in the desert. No titles, no robes, no temple, just sand and silence and stars. His home was carved into the rock, a small shelter built into the side of a canyon wall. From the outside, it looked like nothing. A dent in the landscape. A place no one would think to look. Inside, it was simple. Clean, bare. A narrow bed, a weathered chair, a stove for heating water, one worn robe hanging near the door, and a single lightsaber tucked in a hidden corner. Beneath a stone, he never moved. He didn't need it anymore. Not for now. Each morning, Obi-Wan rose with the suns, not because he had to, but because the light called him. And in the desert, time flowed with the rhythm of the sun. He would sit by the cave entrance, wrapped in a faded cloak, and watch the horizon. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He simply breathed. The desert taught him that, to be still, to let things pass, to listen to the wind. The Jedi Temple had been full of noise, of motion, of rules. But the desert whispered older wisdoms. It told him to wait. So he did. Sometimes he would make tea, boiling water over a small flame, adding crushed herbs gathered from the canyon floor. The steam would curl gently, and he'd sip slowly, eyes half closed. He didn't meditate the way he used to. No formal pose, no perfect silence. But the desert became his meditation. The wind against the stone, the crackle of dry leaves, the shifting of sand dunes far in the distance. He could sit for hours, saying nothing, because peace wasn't something to chase anymore. It was something to accept. Every few days he would walk, not far, just to the edge of the ridge where he could see the Lars homestead. From there, he would watch. Luke. The boy was always moving, chasing after droids, fixing machinery, racing his friends to the edge of the canyon. He was so small, but already full of light. Obi-Wan never approached. He kept his distance, like a shadow, like a ghost. But he was always near, because that was his vow, to protect the child, to stay unseen, to let Luke grow up without the weight of what came before. Sometimes he wondered if Anakin would have liked this place. Would he have hated the dust? Would he have raced speeders across the flats like he used to on pod racers? Would he have watched the sun set the same way Luke did? The thoughts came quietly, then passed. Obi-Wan didn't chase them. There were too many ghosts to chase. So he let them drift by, like clouds, like echoes. One evening, after a long day of walking, he sat beside the canyon wall and lit a small fire. The flames danced low, casting flickers against the rocks. The stars were just beginning to bloom overhead. He reached into a satchel and pulled out a piece of cloth. Wrapped carefully inside it was an old hollow projector. It clicked softly as he turned it on. For a moment, nothing. Then a blue shimmer, a figure. Anakin, young, confident, smiling. It was an old recording from the temple archives, something long before the fall. Obi-Wan watched in silence. The recording said nothing. Just Anakin laughing at something out of frame, playfully nudging someone, so alive. The fire crackled. The desert wind sighed. Obi-Wan turned it off, wrapped it again, tucked it away. Some memories weren't for sharing, even with yourself. At night, the canyon became colder. The wind sharpened, and the stars pulsed brighter in the deep black sky. Inside his shelter, Obi-Wan would light a single lantern. Its glow was soft, barely enough to fill the room. He would sit in his chair, legs crossed, hands resting gently on his knees. Sometimes he would close his eyes and reach out, not far, but enough to feel the fabric of the Force ripple like water. He didn't push it. He didn't call for answers. He just listened. Sometimes he felt Yoda, distant, still alive, still watching. Sometimes he felt nothing. And that was okay. The Force had changed, but it was still there, like wind beneath stone, like breath beneath silence. Obi-Wan kept a journal, and not a Jedi holocron, not a military log. Just a worn leather-bound book, pages filled with ink and thoughts. He didn't write daily. Only when the silence asked him to. Simple things. Saw the boy again today. Ran across the ridge with a smile that reminded me of Anakin, but gentler, softer, like the Force hadn't touched him yet. Or, heard the crate dragon tonight, farther east than usual, louder. I wonder if it dreams. And once, I dreamed of Qui-Gon. He didn't speak, but he was near. He smiled. I think he forgives me. On some days, Obi-Wan walked into Mos Eisley, wearing his hood low, speaking little. He bought what he needed: spices, tools, a new filter for his water distiller. Sometimes he'd sit outside the cantina, not to drink, just to listen. The city had its own rhythm, traders and smugglers, droids in danger. But even here, Obi-Wan felt invisible. He was a man in exile, a monk in the dust, and that was fine, because it wasn't about him anymore. It was about watching, waiting, protecting. Like the suns overhead, he would rise, shine quietly, and set without a word. Back at his cave, the days passed gently. His footsteps wore soft paths in the stone. His fire left little circles of ash. And each night, before resting, he would whisper to the Force. Not a prayer, not a plea, just a thought. Let the boy be safe. Let the galaxy find peace. Let the next day come. And slowly, the silence became a friend. Not a punishment, not a cage, but a companion, because silence holds truth. And in silence, Obi-Wan healed. In the depths of space, far from suns and storms, a ship drifted through the stars like a quiet thought. Its hull was old, its panels mismatched, its engines thrummed with a low, steady hum of travel. The Millennium Falcon, faster than it looked, more stubborn than it should have been. And at this moment, a vessel of peace. Inside the cockpit, stars stretched like threads. Blurs of light dancing past the windows as the ship soared through hyperspace. But no one was in the cockpit now, not even Chewbacca. He had gone to rest. Now, the autopilot blinked quietly, guiding them forward with calm precision. The galaxy outside raged with conflict. Empires rising, alliances forming. A princess missing. A Jedi returned. A message delivered. But here, in this corridor of light, all was still. Luke sat near the hold, his hands resting gently in his lap. He stared at the small circular table where a Deja Rick game had ended hours ago. The holograms were off now. The creatures frozen in memory. No battles, no growls, just empty space. He leaned back against the cool metal wall, his head tilting to the side, his breath evening out. It was the first time in days he wasn't running, not fighting, not searching, just breathing. Across the room, Obi-Wan sat in quiet thought. His hood rested back, revealing silver hair, lines carved from years of war and wandering. His eyes were closed, but he wasn't asleep. He was listening to the hum of the ship, to the Force as it pulsed gently through every bolt, every breath. Inhale, exhale, stillness. Somewhere in the rear cabin, Leia lay curled in a bunk. She wasn't used to sleep. Not like this. Not with quiet around her. A senator's daughter. A rebel's commander. But here, just a girl in a blanket, trying to remember what peace felt like. She held her arms tight across her chest, not in fear, but to hold in the ache, the weight of Alderaan, of family, of messages that might not be enough. But in this moment, her eyes fluttered closed, and the stars hummed beside her. Han Solo was in the lounge, his boots propped on a console, his blaster laid nearby unused. He'd muttered something about keeping watch, but his head had tilted back. His mouth hung slightly open, and his breath had softened. Chewbacca snored beside him, a low, warm rumble. Comforting, safe. The lounge lights were dim. The ship had dimmed itself, sensing the need for quiet. A light flickered once, then settled. Everything slowed. In hyperspace, the stars don't twinkle. They blur, they stretch, they whisper as they pass, each one a flicker of something waiting to be discovered. But no one on the Falcon was watching them now. They were dreaming, or remembering, or letting go. Luke stirred slightly in his seat. His head leaned against a wall pipe. His mouth parted. His hand still held the edge of Obi-Wan's robe, a nervous habit from earlier when the old Jedi had told him stories. He dreamed now of home, of sand, of suns. He dreamed of the stars calling his name, and for once, he didn't chase them. Obi-Wan remained still, eyes still closed, his presence like a stone in a river, unmoving, but felt. He had done this before. Long hyperspace journeys, long silences between battles. But this time, it felt different. This time, he wasn't waiting for war. He was waiting for something else. A shift, a spark, a destiny. The Falcon hummed on, through sectors unmarked, past forgotten moons, over trails left behind by other ships, on other journeys, for other causes. And yet, this one felt quietly important. Even in sleep, they moved towards something larger than any of them could see. But not yet. For now, they were just passengers on a ship in a dream. In the crew quarters, Leia shifted. A strand of hair fell across her cheek. She didn't brush it away. Her hand stayed still. She dreamed of her mother, a smile she barely remembered, a scent of roses and cold marble halls, the sound of her father's voice calling her little star. She dreamed of Alderaan, before the meetings, before the fight, just the lakes, the birds, the gentle wind through white blossoms. And in her dream, she was safe. Han mumbled something, probably a joke, maybe a memory. He shifted in his seat, but didn't wake. Chewie growled softly in response, then settled deeper into sleep. Even warriors have to rest. The Falcon kept going. Her engines thrummed. Her metal gently ticked as the temperature shifted. Her lights dimmed and brightened, as if breathing with her crew. She was an old ship, worn, patched, but proud. And tonight, she was a cradle, holding heroes before they became heroes, holding secrets before they were spoken, holding silence before the storm. In the shadows of the cargo bay, a small compartment opened with a quiet click. R2D. 2 rolled forward slowly, his lights soft and slow. He wasn't sleeping. Droids rarely did. But he moved gently, carefully. He found a quiet corner and settled his frame beside a wall panel. He rotated his dome slowly, beeped once, low and almost melodic. C-3PO powered down across the room, didn't respond. R2 didn't mind. He watched the stars outside the nearest viewport. Or rather, he watched their motion, a constant stream of stretched light. It looked like they were falling sideways. He recorded it, not for anyone else, just for himself. A memory, a moment. He played a quiet snippet of Leia's message, just the first line. "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi." He stopped the clip, not out of sadness, but because he didn't need to hear the rest tonight. The message was already in motion. The right people had heard it. The ship was moving. The Force was watching. For R2, that was enough. Obi-Wan stirred, his eyes open. He didn't speak. He didn't stand. He just breathed. Then a faint smile. He felt it. Something shifting. Something old. Becoming new. A path opening. Not for him, but for the boy. And for the girl. And for the future. But not yet. Tonight was for rest. For dreams. For drifting. He closed his eyes again and let the hum of the Falcon carry him. There was a kind of magic in hyperspace, a silence that wasn't empty, but full of movement, of momentum, of purpose. It asked nothing. It gave nothing. It just carried you, like a tide, like a whisper, like a lullaby between stars. Let your body rest now. Let your thoughts slow. Imagine yourself aboard the Falcon, nestled in a quiet corner, surrounded by soft lights and steady sound. The engine hummed beneath you, the stars outside, the warmth of sleep beside Leia, the calm of Obi-Wan across from you, the steady breath of Chewie behind the door. You're safe here. No battles yet. No plans yet. Just this quiet flight through space, this dream. Before the alarms, before the betrayal, before the carbonite, Cloud City floated in peace. High above the gas giant Bespin, it drifted like a forgotten castle in the clouds. A gentle giant, a city with no wind, no war, no worry, just air, light, and the soft hum of altitude. There was a stillness here, the kind you don't expect in a city. The corridors were quiet, the walls breathed, the windows opened into oceans of sky. And the sunset, it lasted forever. On this day, the sky burned gold. Pale orange melted into purple, and purple into soft indigo. Below the city's edge, a sea of clouds stretched endlessly, soft as blankets, cool as sleep. Leia stood at the balcony rail. Her hands rested on smooth metal. The wind played gently with her sleeves. She wasn't thinking of rebellion, or war, or duty. She was just watching the sky change. And for once, she didn't feel the weight of everything. She just breathed. Behind her, Lando's voice faded into the distance. Something about dinner preparations, power grid efficiencies, and wine. But Leia wasn't listening. Not right now. She tilted her head toward the clouds. Imagine what it would feel like to fall into them. Not with fear, but like diving into a dream. Inside the guest suite, Han Solo lay stretched across a velvet lounge chair. Boots kicked off, arms behind his head. The lighting was soft. Cloud City always kept its lights warm, like candlelight filtered through mist. He wasn't asleep, but his eyes were closed. He listened to the hum of the walls, the faint buzzing of city maintenance droids. Leia's footsteps when she walked by. Every now and then, he smiled. Chewbacca was curled up near the room's corner. The floor beneath him gently vibrated, a pulse that matched the city's altitude stabilizers. He liked that sound. It reminded him of the trees on Kashyyyk, how they creaked in rhythm, how the wind moved through them like a slow song. He snored softly now, a low sound that never disturbed anyone, only calmed. C-3PO wandered the halls for a while. He marveled at the design, the curves, the efficient architecture. Why, I must say, this city's layout is rather elegant, clean, practical, minimal sand exposure. He said this to no one in particular, but the walls listened kindly. R2, D2 rolled beside him, clicking and chirping gently. Together, they passed through silver corridors lit with golden trim, the kind of walk that had no destination, only time and quiet. Elsewhere, Lando Calrissian leaned against the arch of the dining hall. He had already checked the meal, adjusted the seating, aligned the lighting to a soft lavender glow. Now he simply waited, not as a baron, not as a smuggler, just a man in a clean shirt, hoping his guests might enjoy the sky. He took a sip of wine and smiled. Back on the balcony, Leia turned slightly as Luke approached. He hadn't been in the city long. He hadn't said much since he arrived. His eyes carried the weight of distance, the kind that doesn't come from travel, but from questions. Still, when he stood beside her, she nodded. Luke looked out across the clouds. His breath softened. His shoulders dropped. "It's beautiful here." Leia nodded. "It doesn't feel real." Luke smiled faintly. "It doesn't have to, just for tonight." They stood side by side, watching the clouds shift like oceans beneath them. Inside, the lights dimmed further. Cloud City knew how to read a mood. Even its droids slowed down after sunset. Dinner could wait. The rooms didn't ask for anyone's attention. They only offered calm. Han eventually sat up, ran a hand through his hair, and stood slowly. He walked to the balcony doorway, leaned on the frame, and watched Leia and Luke in silence. He didn't interrupt. He didn't smirk. He just let the moment live. Some things didn't need words. Later, when they did gather for the meal, it wasn't formal. There were no speeches, no plans, just soft clinks of cutlery, aromas of roasted vegetables and sweet spice sauces, chilled fruit on silver trays. Cups filled, but not emptied. Laughter came, quiet, polite, real. Even Leia smiled fully. Even Luke's eyes twinkled for a moment. Even Chewbacca chuckled when R2 bumped into a serving cart and 3PO tried to lecture it with a folded napkin on his head. But after dinner, after the plates were cleared, they each found their quiet corners again. Leia returned to the same balcony. This time, she sat on a cushioned bench. The night air was cooler. The stars above were closer than they'd ever seemed. Not just pinpricks, but flames. Tiny, flickering dreams. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and leaned back. No thoughts, no burdens, just sky. Han stood in the doorway again. He didn't speak, just watched her rest. And for a moment, just a second, he imagined something else. A life without the chase. A sky that didn't lead to danger. Just evenings like this. Then he turned and walked away. Luke found himself alone on the upper landing. The space was quiet, the city designed to make even metal feel soft. He sat with his legs crossed, hands resting on his knees. He closed his eyes, breathed in, and reached. Not far, not deep, just enough to feel the edge of something. The Force, waiting, balanced, still. C-3PO and R2 returned to their alcove. R2 shut down for the night, his lights pulsing gently like a sleeping heartbeat. 3PO sighed. Well, I suppose it's the most civilized place we've been in quite some time. He sat, unusually calm, and leaned slightly against the wall. His joints clicked. But no complaints came. Even he was learning to rest. The city rotated slowly as it drifted, like a cradle swinging in air. The clouds beneath it shifted in slow patterns, reflecting the lights from above. Windows dimmed one by one. Lights softened from gold to blue. Even the music from the lower levels faded into silence. The only sound left was the wind. Not loud, not cold, just presence, like breath. You can rest now too. Close your eyes. Imagine the balcony, the sky above, the clouds below, the soft hum of a floating city wrapped in twilight. No war here, no plans, no sabers, just air, light, and dreams. Let your breath rise like the towers. Let your thoughts drift like the clouds. Sleep as Cloud City sleeps. And know that, for this moment, all is well. Deep in the galaxy's forgotten corners, where no star maps bother to point, there is a world that speaks in whispers. Dagobah. No cities, no machines, no ships gliding through atmosphere. Only water, trees, fog, and breath. It is a quiet world, a wild world, and yet a gentle one. Because here, things grow slowly. Here, things live by listening. And on this day, just like any other, the air is thick with mist, and the vines dangle like curtains from the sky. Luke Skywalker woke in Yoda's hut. His eyes opened slowly. At first, he didn't remember where he was. The ceiling was low. Roots curved through the clay like old fingers. The air smelled of wet bark, old books, and something boiling nearby. Then he remembered. The swamp, the training. The old green teacher who seemed impossibly wise and impossibly confusing. He stretched his arms carefully, not wanting to bump the low ceiling. His limbs were sore but not painful. Used. Outside, a bird called once, then silence again. Yoda was already awake. He sat cross-legged on a smooth stone near the hut's entrance, his eyes closed, his breath slow. The mist curled around him like fog around a mountain. He didn't move. He didn't need to. Because he wasn't waiting for the day. He was already part of it. Luke stepped out slowly, his boots squishing into the soft moss. The swamp was alive, but not loud. Water dripped gently from ferns. Insects buzzed in soft spirals through beams of sunlight. Something distant croaked, but only once. He looked at Yoda, didn't speak, just sat beside him. They watched the morning unfold. No orders, no urgency, just mist shifting, leaves rustling, the swamp breathing. Eventually, Yoda spoke. Soft, gravelly, like wind brushing stone. Rushing, you are not. Good. Luke smiled faintly. I'm learning. Yoda nodded. Not everything needed to be said twice. Breakfast was simple. A bowl of roots and steamed leaves. Luke didn't recognize the ingredients, but it tasted warm, earthy, good. Yoda ate with slow, deliberate movements. No rush. Every bite part of the rhythm. Luke copied him. Not because he was told to, because it felt right. The hut was quiet, but not empty. Inside, the force stirred like steam from the bowl. Later they walked. Not trained. Not jumped or balanced or lifted stones. Just walked. Through shallow water. Past thick tree roots that curved like bridges. Over moss so soft it silenced every step. They didn't speak. Only looked. Yoda pointed at nothing. But Luke saw everything. A beetle crawling across a log. A tree's reflection rippling in the pond. His own breath in the morning air. It all mattered. It all existed. And that was enough. Around midday they reached a clearing. Sunlight poured in through a break in the canopy, warm and golden, turning the mist into glitter. Yoda sat on a large stone. Luke sat beside a stump. And they breathed. Together. The clearing was alive with the hum of life, but not loud. The force moved like a breeze. In and out, around and through. Luke felt it without trying. Not because Yoda was teaching, but because the swamp already was. Yoda finally spoke. Difficult? The force is not. Difficult, you are. Luke blinked. Yoda opened one eye. Think less, feel more. Try not. Be. Luke smiled. He didn't argue, just breathed. Later, the rain came. It didn't crash down. It whispered. Fat drops fell from above, tapping gently on leaves, on skin, on the surface of the pond. Luke tilted his face upward, let the water run down his cheeks, his neck, his shoulders. Yoda simply lowered his head slightly, his eyes closed. Neither of them moved for shelter, because rain was part of it too. They returned to the hut as the sky darkened, not because they had to, but because the day was ending. Yoda stirred the pot again, this time something spiced. Luke handed him a carved wooden bowl. He didn't need to be asked. Their motions were practiced, comfortable. They didn't need light. The fire gave them enough. Shadows danced across the walls like slow-moving creatures. Outside, frogs called to each other. The swamp had its own language, its own music. Luke listened. And slowly, he stopped needing answers. He let the day be what it was. Just a day. A lesson without words. That night, Luke sat alone outside the hut, wrapped in a blanket. The mist thicker now, the swamp darker, but not frightening. The sky above barely showed stars, just a few, hazy and far between the branches. But that was okay. He didn't need to see everything. Just enough. He thought of home, of the farm, of the way the sun set in pairs, of Aunt Beru's voice, of Uncle Owen's frown. He didn't long for it, but he honored it. That was where he began. This was where he became. Yoda stepped beside him, slow and silent. He didn't sit, just stood quietly. After a while, he spoke. Strong, your heart is, but stillness, that is your strength. Luke looked up, nodded. Yoda smiled. Sleep, tomorrow waits, but tonight, let go. Luke entered the hut, lay on the low mat, pulled the blanket over his chest. He listened to the swamp, the frogs, the wind, the bubbling pot, the low breath of Yoda as he settled in the other room. And he slept, not with dreams of sabers, or war, or darkness. He dreamed of water, of light through trees, of wind that spoke gently. He dreamed of being still. So now, if you're listening, let yourself enter the swamp, and it's not with fear, and not with questions. Just step in slowly. Let the moss hold your feet. Let the vines welcome you. Let Yoda's presence calm you. There are no battles here, Only trees, only breath. Let your body grow still. Let your thoughts ripple out like water. And rest. The Force is with you, always. But for now, the swamp watches, the rain sings, and you sleep. Before the Clone Wars, before the betrayal, before the fire touched its walls, the Jedi Temple stood in silence. High above the endless skyline of Coruscant, it rose like a calm mountain in a city that never slept. Ships blinked past in every direction. Air traffic moved in streams. Crowds surged across platforms below. But inside the temple, there was stillness. And yet, the sun was just beginning to rise over the planet's edge. Its light caught the highest spires of the temple first, turning their tips to gold. Birds long since brought from Alderaan chirped softly in the upper gardens. Wind swept through the air ducts, rushing gently through marble halls like breath through a flute. And on this day, as on many others, the Jedi woke early, not to fight, not to debate, but to listen, to stretch, to exist. The temple was more than a place of power. It was a place of rhythm, of footsteps on stone, of fountains echoing through courtyards, of robes sweeping quietly past statues carved from memory. The Hall of Light was already warm. Its tall windows poured sunbeams across the floor, casting soft reflections against polished columns. There, in the center, a group of younglings sat in a circle. They were barely older than 10, wrapped in beige robes too large for their limbs, eyes full of wonder, but movements slow and gentle. Their instructor, Master Terra Sinuba, stood with hands folded behind his back. He did not speak yet. He only waited. And the younglings waited too, not in boredom, in patience, because silence here was part of the lesson. Elsewhere in the temple, Obi-Wan Kenobi walked the outer balcony. His steps were light, his breath calm. He passed a meditation tree, its silver leaves trembling in the wind. He paused for a moment, placed a hand on its bark. The tree hummed faintly. Alive. Always alive. He bowed his head, then continued walking. The city stretched far below, a sea of towers and speeders. But up here, it felt like the galaxy had slowed down. In the archives, Jocasta Nu moved through the shelves. Her fingers traced the spines of datacrons. She wasn't searching. She was checking. The hollow books glowed softly, casting pale blue light along her path. Far above, the stained glass ceiling reflected 1,000 suns, not real stars, but ancient ones, recorded from Jedi missions long ago. And between every shelf, there was peace. Some students studied, some read aloud in whispers. Some just sat and listened to the quiet of knowledge. Even in a library this large, the silence held them like a blanket. In one of the temple's quietest wings, Master Plo Koon knelt beside a fountain. Water spilled gently from a stone basin, dripping into a shallow pool. He dipped his fingers into the water, closed his eyes. His mask hid his expression, but not his calm. The Force wrapped around him like the steam rising from the pool, invisible but warm. A young Padawan passed nearby. She slowed, watching him. He opened his eyes, nodded softly to her. She returned the bow and continued on. Neither said a word, but something passed between them. Stillness, respect, understanding. In the training rooms, a group of initiates practiced slow forms, not duels, Not sparring, just movements. Saber hilts unlit, breath in sync. Master Aayla Secura moved among them, correcting posture with a gentle hand, smiling softly when one student balanced perfectly. Each step a breath, each breath a thought. Outside the windows, traffic thundered, but inside, only the quiet swish of cloth and the steady rhythm of learning. In the grand meditation chamber, Mace Windu sat alone. The chamber was vast, its walls curved like a dome, its floor inlaid with gold. A shaft of light poured down from the oculus above. It rested directly on him. He didn't move. He breathed. His mind was not still, not entirely, but he knew how to let the noise drift. There were whispers in the Force, but they hadn't reached him yet. For now, he was simply present, anchored, balanced. Elsewhere, Anakin Skywalker stood at the edge of a sparring room, watching his Padawan, Ahsoka. She was practicing alone, a slow saber kata, every motion thoughtful. Anakin didn't interrupt. For once, he didn't correct. He just watched. And somewhere inside him, a thread of peace stirred. Soft, delicate, like it hadn't been touched in years. He folded his arms and said nothing. Atop the temple's highest tower, the wind was strong. But one Jedi sat without moving. Yoda, his eyes half closed, his ears twitching in the breeze. He listened not to the city, but to the galaxy. And it whispered to him, as it always did. Here in this temple, peace was not taught. It was remembered. Because Jedi are not born knowing balance. They are born into noise. And learn to walk softly, like water on stone. As midday approached, bells rang softly across the halls. Not alarms, not warnings, just a note, a tone of balance. Letting the Jedi know that the hour was changing. In one classroom, Master Shakti guided her students in a meditation garden. Lotus blossoms floated in a clear pool. Lanterns hung from delicate threads. Padawans sat with eyes closed, surrounded by nothing but breath and breeze. One of them stirred. A thought, perhaps. A distraction. Shakti did not scold. She gently placed a hand on the student's shoulder and whispered, "Return." The student nodded, exhaled, and did. Even droids moved gently in the temple. Maintenance units swept the halls, with brushes that barely touched the floor. Archivist assistants floated silently, projecting images and star charts in midair. Even the kitchen droids, chopping and steaming and arranging small trays, did so with soft hisses and hums that added to the quiet rhythm of the building. The temple was not silent because no one made sound. It was silent because everyone respected the space between sounds. In the dormitories, Padawans returned from morning training. Some showered, some rested, some just sat by their windows and looked out over the city. Coruscant never stopped moving. But inside these walls, the Jedi did. Not to escape, but to center. Because the galaxy did not need more motion. It needed more presence. And here, in this moment, they were present. Let your mind wander there now. Picture yourself walking through the quiet temple halls, your robes trailing behind you, your steps soft, your breath calm. You pass tall windows filled with golden light. You hear the echo of fountains. You smell incense from the meditation gardens. You feel warmth from the marble beneath your feet. You do not hurry. You are not tested. You are simply here. Let your thoughts slow. Let your shoulders relax. The Force is not pulling you anywhere. Tonight, it simply holds you. As the day faded, the Jedi Temple changed again. The corridors remained calm. The air still warm. But the light shifted, soft amber turning to muted gold, then deep rose, and finally to a quiet blue. The towers reflected the last of the sun. And inside the stone walls, shadows began to stretch. This was a sacred hour. Even the youngest initiates knew it. Even the air seemed to pause. In the Hall of Reflection, Master Ki-Adi-Mundi walked slowly between the statues of Jedi past, each carved from stone collected across centuries, some worn smooth from time, others sharp and new. The chamber was long, lined with high pillars. The floor held soft pools of water, where light rippled from the ceiling. He didn't speak. He didn't stop. He simply passed through, as Jedi had for generations, to remember, to release, to reset. In the central garden, the lanterns began to glow, soft orbs of white and silver, hanging gently in the trees. They did not flicker. They pulsed, as if breathing with the temple itself. Padawans sat along the garden paths, feet tucked under their robes, scrolls and datapads in their laps. But no one read aloud. They studied in silence, learning through listening, learning through stillness. The garden's centerpiece, a great tree older than the temple walls, stood watch. Its roots were wide, its bark lined with grooves, each line a story the galaxy had long forgotten. A small group of younglings followed Master Yaddle across the stone bridges above the koi pond. They walked in a line, each student no taller than her knee. Their laughter was gentle, held inside the bounds of respect. She stopped at a quiet bench, and with a soft nod, they sat together. The breeze passed through their robes. Their legs swung freely over the edge. Yaddle closed her eyes and began to hum. Low, peaceful, a tune without words. The younglings listened. Their feet stopped swinging. Their shoulders stilled. The hum became their focus. And for a few precious minutes, it became the only sound in the galaxy. Elsewhere, Anakin walked the empty training hall, his footsteps slow. The lights were dimmed. No duels tonight. No masters observing. Just the echoes of sabers long since extinguished. He walked to the center, stopped, closed his eyes. He thought of Ahsoka, of Obi-Wan, of Padme. He thought of the boy he used to be, running through these halls. Too fast, too loud. Now, he was quiet. The silence made him feel younger again, and somehow older too. He opened his eyes, then turned and walked out, without saying a word. In the tower library, Jocasta Nu lit the final row of lanterns. Each glow pad flickered softly, responding to her presence. She placed a hand on the archive console and waited as it confirmed its nightly backup. Thousands of years of knowledge, thousands of voices, captured in light. The Jedi did not hoard wisdom. They carried it gently. And here, it slept with them. Down in the meditation chambers, Obi-Wan sat cross-legged beside the small fountain. He had returned from the outer balcony, his hands still warm from the sun. He didn't focus on anything in particular. He let go of thoughts one by one as they floated to the surface. The way Master Qui-Gon used to describe it, you do not chase the ripples. You sit in the center of the pool and let them pass. Tonight, Obi-Wan didn't chase. He simply sat and let everything pass through him like light through glass. In the healing wing, a few younglings rested in bunks. Minor bruises from saber drills, a sprained ankle, one small burn from touching a cooking unit too early. Healers moved quietly between them. Gentle laughter, cool hands, a whispered lullaby in a language long forgotten. The Force was strongest here, not because of power, but because of care. Where there was kindness, the Force gathered like dew. Back in the youngling dormitories, lights dimmed one by one. A row of tiny beds, neatly folded tunics, wooden shelves holding carved toys and soft meditation stones. Master Terra Sinubi checked in from the doorway. He smiled once, seeing a young Twi'lek initiate already asleep, with a hollow book still resting on her chest. He walked over, lifted the book, tucked the blanket higher under her chin, and said softly, "Dream strong, young one." Then he turned and let the quiet return. Night fell fully now. Coruscant outside buzzed and blinked and thundered, but inside the temple there was peace. From the highest tower to the lowest meditation cell, the Force flowed gently through every stone, every breath. It moved through statues, through vines, through footsteps. It moved through memory. And for this one evening, this ordinary, golden, sacred evening, there was no war, no fear, no fall. Only now. Only presence. Only peace. So breathe with it. Breathe with the temple. Feel the stone beneath you. Feel the quiet around you. Feel the warmth of 1,000 Jedi before you, who also sat and waited and listened. Let their presence guide you. You don't need to understand the Force tonight. You only need to feel that you belong, because you do. You always have. Sleep now. The temple watches over you. Its lights may dim, but its heart remains open, just like yours. Good night, young one. The Jedi dream with you. Before the Clone Wars, before the betrayal, before the fire touched its walls, the Jedi Temple stood in silence. High above the endless skyline of Coruscant, it rose like a calm mountain in a city that never slept. Ships blinked past in every direction. Air traffic moved in streams. Crowds surged across platforms below. But inside the temple, there was stillness. The sun was just beginning to rise over the planet's edge. Its light caught the highest spires of the temple first, turning their tips to gold. Birds long since brought from Alderaan chirped softly in the upper gardens. Wind swept through the air ducts, rushing gently through marble halls like breath through a flute. And on this day, as on many others, the Jedi woke early, not to fight, not to debate, but to listen, to stretch, to exist. The temple was more than a place of power. It was a place of rhythm, of footsteps on stone, of fountains echoing through courtyards, of robes sweeping quietly past statues carved from memory. The Hall of Light was already warm. Its tall windows poured sunbeams across the floor, casting soft reflections against polished columns. There, in the center, a group of younglings sat in a circle. They were barely older than 10, wrapped in beige robes too large for their limbs, eyes full of wonder, but movements slow and gentle. Their instructor, Master Terra Sinuba, stood with hands folded behind his back. He did not speak yet. He only waited. And the younglings waited too, not in boredom, in patience, because silence here was part of the lesson. Elsewhere in the temple, Obi-Wan Kenobi walked the outer balcony. His steps were light, his breath calm. He passed a meditation tree, its silver leaves trembling in the wind. He paused for a moment, placed a hand on its bark. The tree hummed faintly, alive, always alive. He bowed his head, then continued walking. The city stretched far below, a sea of towers and speeders. But up here, it felt like the galaxy had slowed down. In the archives, Jocasta Nu moved through the shelves. Her fingers traced the spines of datacrons. She wasn't searching. She was checking. The hollow books glowed softly, casting pale blue light along her path. Far above, the stained glass ceiling reflected 1,000 suns, not real stars, but ancient ones, recorded from Jedi missions long ago. And between every shelf, there was peace. Some students studied, some read aloud in whispers. Some just sat and listened to the quiet of knowledge. Even in a library this large, the silence held them like a blanket. In one of the temple's quietest wings, Master Plo Koon knelt beside a fountain. Water spilled gently from a stone basin, dripping into a shallow pool. He dipped his fingers into the water, closed his eyes. His mask hid his expression, but not his calm. The force wrapped around him like the steam rising from the pool, invisible but warm. A young Padawan passed nearby. She slowed, watching him. He opened his eyes, nodded softly to her. She returned the bow and continued on. Neither said a word, but something passed between them. Stillness, respect, understanding. In the training rooms, a group of the initiates practiced slow forms, not duels, not sparring, just movements. Saber hilts unlit, breath in sync. Master Ayla Secura moved among them, correcting posture with a gentle hand, smiling softly when one student balanced perfectly, each step a breath, each breath a thought. Outside the windows, traffic thundered. But inside, only the quiet swish of cloth and the steady rhythm of learning. In the grand meditation chamber, Mace Windu sat alone. The chamber was vast, its walls curved like a dome, its floor inlaid with gold. A shaft of light poured down from the oculus above. It rested directly on him. He didn't move. He breathed. His mind was not still, not entirely, but he knew how to let the noise drift. There were whispers in the Force, but they hadn't reached him yet. For now, he was simply present, anchored, balanced. Elsewhere, Anakin Skywalker stood at the edge of a sparring room, watching his Padawan, Ahsoka. She was practicing alone, a slow saber kata, every motion thoughtful. Anakin didn't interrupt. For once, he didn't correct. He just watched. And somewhere inside him, a thread of peace stirred, soft, delicate, like it hadn't been touched in years. He folded his arms and said nothing. Atop the temple's highest tower, the wind was strong. But one Jedi sat without moving, Yoda, his eyes half closed, his ears twitching in the breeze. He listened not to the city, but to the galaxy, and it whispered to him, as it always did. Here in this temple, peace was not taught. It was remembered. Because Jedi are not born knowing balance. They are born into noise and learn to walk softly, like water on stone. As midday approached, bells rang softly across the halls. Not alarms, not warnings, just a note, a tone of balance, letting the Jedi know that the hour was changing. In one classroom, Master Shakti guided her students in a meditation garden. Lotus blossoms floated in a clear pool. Lanterns hung from delicate threads. Padawans sat with eyes closed, surrounded by nothing but breath and breeze. One of them stirred. A thought, perhaps. A distraction. Shakti did not scold. She gently placed a hand on the student's shoulder and whispered, "Return." The student nodded, exhaled, and did. Even droids moved gently in the temple. Maintenance units swept the halls with brushes that barely touched the floor. Archivist assistants floated silently, projecting images and star charts in midair. Even the kitchen droids, chopping and steaming and arranging small trays, did so with soft hisses and hums that added to the quiet rhythm of the building. The temple was not silent because no one made sound. It was silent because everyone respected the space between sounds. In the dormitories, Padawans returned from morning training. Some showered, some rested, some just sat by their windows and looked out over the city. Coruscant never stopped moving. But inside these walls, the Jedi did, not to escape, but to center, because the galaxy did not need more motion. It needed more presence. And here, in this moment, they were present. Let your mind wander there now. Picture yourself walking through the quiet temple halls, your robes trailing behind you, your steps soft, your breath calm. You pass tall windows filled with golden light. You hear the echo of fountains. You smell incense from the meditation gardens. You feel warmth from the marble beneath your feet. You do not hurry. You are not tested. You are simply here. Let your thoughts slow. Let your shoulders relax. The Force is not pulling you anywhere. Tonight, it simply holds you. As the day faded, the Jedi Temple changed again. The corridors remained calm, the air still warm, but the light shifted, soft amber turning to muted gold, then deep rose, and finally to a quiet blue. The towers reflected the last of the sun, and inside the stone walls, shadows began to stretch. This was a sacred hour. Even the youngest initiates knew it. Even the air seemed to pause. In the Hall of Reflection, Master Ki-Adi-Mundi walked slowly between the statues of Jedi past, each carved from stone, collected across centuries. Some worn smooth from time, others sharp and new. The chamber was long, lined with high pillars. The floor held soft pools of water where light rippled from the ceiling. He didn't speak. He didn't stop. He simply passed through, as Jedi had for generations, to remember, to release, to reset. In the central garden, the lanterns began to glow, soft orbs of white and silver hanging gently in the trees. They did not flicker. They pulsed, as if breathing with the temple itself. Padawans sat along the garden paths, feet tucked under their robes, scrolls and data pads in their laps. But no one read aloud. They studied in silence, learning through listening, learning through stillness. The garden's centerpiece, a great tree older than the temple walls, stood watch. Its roots were wide, its bark lined with grooves. Each line, a story the galaxy had long forgotten. A small group of younglings followed Master Yaddle across the stone bridges above the koi pond. They walked in a line, each student no taller than her knee. Their laughter was gentle, held inside the bounds of respect. She stopped at a quiet bench, and with a soft nod, they sat together. The breeze passed through their robes. Their legs swung freely over the edge. Yaddle closed her eyes and began to hum. Low, peaceful, a tune without words. The younglings listened. Their feet stopped swinging, their shoulders stilled. The hum became their focus, and for a few precious minutes, it became the only sound in the galaxy. Elsewhere, Anakin walked the empty training hall. His footsteps slow. The lights were dimmed. No duels tonight. No masters observing. Just the echoes of sabers long since extinguished. He walked to the center, stopped, closed his eyes. He thought of Ahsoka, of Obi-Wan, of Padme. He thought of the boy he used to be, running through these halls. Too fast, too loud. Now, he was quiet. The silence made him feel younger again. And somehow older, too. He opened his eyes, then turned and walked out without saying a word. In the tower library, Jocasta Nu lit the final row of lanterns. Each glow pad flickered softly, responding to her presence. She placed a hand on the archive console and waited as it confirmed its nightly backup. Thousands of years of knowledge, thousands of voices, captured in light. Shati, the Jedi did not hoard wisdom. They carried it gently. And here, it slept with them. Down in the meditation chambers, Obi-Wan sat cross-legged beside the small fountain. He had returned from the outer balcony, his hands still warm from the sun. He didn't focus on anything in particular. He let go of thoughts one by one as they floated to the surface, the way Master Qui-Gon used to describe it. You do not chase the ripples. You sit in the center of the pool and let them pass. Tonight, Obi-Wan didn't chase. He simply sat and let everything pass through him, like light through glass. In the healing wing, a few younglings rested in bunks. Minor bruises from saber drills, a sprained ankle, one small burn from touching a cooking unit too early. Healers moved quietly between them. Gentle laughter, cool hands, a whispered lullaby in a language long forgotten. The Force was strongest here, not because of power, but because of care. Where there was kindness, the Force gathered like dew. Back in the youngling dormitories, lights dimmed one by one. A row of tiny beds, neatly folded tunics. Wooden shelves holding carved toys and soft meditation stones. Master Terra Sinabed checked in from the doorway. He smiled once, seeing a young Twi'lek initiate, already asleep, with a hollow book still resting on her chest. He walked over, lifted the book, tucked the blanket higher under her chin, and said softly, "Dream strong, young one." Then he turned and let the quiet return. Night fell fully now. Coruscant outside buzzed and blinked and thundered, but inside the temple, there was peace. From the highest tower to the lowest meditation cell, the Force flowed gently through every stone, every breath. It moved through statues, through vines, through footsteps. It moved through memory. And for this one evening, this ordinary, golden, sacred evening. There was no war, no fear, no fall. Only now, only presence, only peace. So breathe with it. Breathe with the temple. Feel the stone beneath you. Feel the quiet around you. Feel the warmth of 1,000 Jedi before you, who also sat and waited and listened. And let their presence guide you. You don't need to understand the Force tonight. You only need to feel that you belong, because you do. You always have. Sleep now. The temple watches over you. Its lights may dim, but its heart remains open, just like yours. Good night, young one. The Jedi dream with you. The fires had burned bright. The drums had echoed through the trees. Laughter had rung out across the forest moon. But now, Endor was quiet again. The celebration was over. The Empire had fallen. The sky had lit up in flame. The rebels had danced. The Ewoks had sung. And now, the night belonged to silence. To embers, to breath, to stars hanging gently in the leaves. Leia sat beside the dying fire. Her boots were off. Her legs stretched out across a bed of moss. Her hands rested in her lap. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't frowning either. She was just still. The orange glow of the campfire flickered against her cheeks. The warmth reached only halfway. The rest of her was touched by moonlight. She looked up at the trees. Their branches swayed gently above. The stars poked through in little clusters. For the first time in years, there was nothing left to do. No decisions, no battles, no loss waiting at the next transmission. Only the hum of insects and the crackle of the fire. Across from her, Han Solo lay on his back, arms folded behind his head, a half smirk lingering from earlier stories told around the fire. His voice was quiet now, just a breath. He wasn't asleep. Not yet. He was listening. To the breeze. To the trees. To Leia's breathing. And maybe, somewhere deeper, to the sound of his own heart, finally. Slowing down. Chewbacca sat nearby, his legs tucked beneath him, his fur still damp from a water fight with the younger Ewoks hours earlier. His eyes were half closed. He let out a slow, rumbly breath. Not a growl, not a snore, just contentment. He leaned against the thick log and didn't move again. A little further beyond the fire, the Ewok village was starting to dim. The torches along the walkways faded to soft glows. The drums had stopped. The chattering had ceased. Only a few tiny voices remained, small cubs whispering bedtime stories beneath woven canopies. Wicket. The Ewok sat at the edge of the platform, his feet dangling. He watched the rebel camp, watched the new friends breathe in silence. Then he smiled and curled up in his sling bed, blanketed in leaves and feathers. Luke sat apart from the others, not far, just high. He had climbed to the outer edge of the platform, where the trees leaned out into open sky. There, he sat with his legs crossed, his lightsaber clipped at his belt, his mind somewhere between stars and shadows. He looked up. The night was clearer now. The Death Star, gone. Its wreckage long since burned in the sky. No ships in pursuit, no alarms, just stars. Quiet stars. His thoughts drifted to Vader, to Anakin, to the man beneath the mask. He had burned the armor, watched the flame carry the past away, but his heart still carried the weight, not in pain, not in guilt, just memory. Then he felt it, not a vision, not a flash, just a presence, warm, near. He turned his head slightly and smiled. 3 shapes shimmered in the forest edge, not solid, not glowing, just present. Obi-Wan, Yoda, Anakin. They didn't speak, but Luke felt them. In the rustle of the leaves, in the hush of the wind, in the breath between thoughts. He nodded once. They nodded back. And slowly faded into the trees. Luke returned to the fire soon after. He sat beside Leia. Neither spoke for a long while. Then Leia said quietly, "He was your father?" Luke nodded. "Yes." She lowered her gaze to the embers. The fire was down to its last few flames. I felt something when he was gone, like a silence I'd never heard before. Luke looked into the coals. The light reflected in his eyes. He saved me. He saved himself. Leia didn't cry. Not tonight. But she rested her hand gently on Luke's. And the silence between them was stronger than words. Han shifted, watching them from the other side. He didn't interrupt, didn't joke, just smiled to himself, then looked back up at the stars. The fire finally dimmed to coals. A few sparks jumped into the air and danced for a second, then vanished. Leia stretched out on her side, her head resting on a folded blanket. Luke lay down beside her, gazing upward. Han turned on his side. Chewbacca was already snoring, softly, peacefully. The clearing was lit now only by starlight and the occasional glowworm drifting through the air. Somewhere, an Ewok flute played a lullaby. Soft, haunting, sweet. A song meant for the trees, not the ears. But the rebels heard it, and their breathing slowed. The wind wrapped around them like a shawl, and the forest stood watch. They did not dream of war. They did not relive the past. They dreamed of warmth, of suns rising over a green moon, of food shared without urgency, of names spoken without titles. They dreamed of quiet paths through old trees, of laughter with no edge, of freedom without tension. And for this one night, they dreamed without fear. So now, if your eyes are still open, close them gently. You're on Endor now. The fire has gone out, but its warmth remains in your chest. Leia is breathing softly beside you. Luke has fallen asleep, his chest rising slowly. Han stirs only to pull the blanket closer. Chewbacca curls tighter. And the Ewoks hum as they drift into dreams. There are no alarms, no hyperspace jumps, no missions waiting in the morning. Only starlight, only trees, only peace. Let yourself sink into the moss beneath you. Let the moon pull you towards sleep. Let the flute's lullaby wrap around your breath. You are safe. You are warm. The war is over, and the forest will hold you until morning. The night deepened. The treetops above swayed slowly, their leaves shimmering with starlight and the quiet breath of wind. A few final sparks rose from the fire's remains, drifting upward like lost wishes before disappearing into the dark. There were no more toasts, no more victory chants, no more footsteps across the wood-plank village. Only sleep now. Sleep and stories told in silence. Luke opened his eyes just once more. The forest was still. He rolled onto his back and looked at the stars between the branches. They didn't twinkle here like they did on Tatooine. They glowed, slow, steady, close. He thought of Yoda, of Ben, of his father. He thought of the long path that had led him here, the choices, the pain, the faith. And now here he was, not a Jedi in training, not a boy looking for answers, just a man lying in the woods with his family nearby and the Force surrounding everything. It wasn't loud anymore. It was quiet and kind. He turned his head. Leia was asleep, her brow soft for the first time in days. Her braid had unraveled slightly, a few strands brushing her cheek. She looked peaceful, not because she had nothing left to fight for, but because she didn't have to fight tonight. That was what made it different. Not that the war was over, but that, for this moment, peace had arrived. And it had been let in. A faint hum sounded from the trees. Not droids, not ships, not danger, just Ewok chimes. Tiny bells made of carved shells, dangling from ropes between branches, swaying softly with the wind. Their tones were sweet, random, like the forest singing itself to sleep. Han stirred as the breeze brushed over him. He pulled the blanket tighter around his shoulders. Then, without thinking, his hand reached out and found Leia's. Fingers intertwined, even in sleep. In the distance, one final fire crackled. A lone Ewok elder sat beside it, humming an ancient tune. Not a war song, not a victory chant. A bedtime song. He plucked a stringed instrument made of vines and stone. The notes rose slowly, then fell like soft rain. Around him, young cubs lay curled in leaf hammocks. Their chests rose and fell. One reached out in their sleep, as if catching a falling star in their dream. The elder smiled. His tune grew slower, and eventually, it faded altogether. But the feeling lingered, like warmth after a fire. The whole forest exhaled. The sky above turned a deeper blue. The stars stayed close. Even the creatures of Endor tucked themselves into burrows, into nests, into vines. Somewhere a mother Gorax yawned. Somewhere else a pack of tree foxes slept curled around each other. Even the trees leaned inward, as if resting against one another. And above them all, the moon watched, not with light, with stillness. Leia dreamed of her mother, not Padme in the throne room, not the Queen of Naboo, just a woman in a garden, braiding Leia's hair with lavender. The woman did not speak. She didn't have to. She just smiled and wrapped her arms around her. Leia leaned into the memory without resistance. Luke dreamed of Tatooine, but not the part filled with suns and sand and sorrow. He dreamed of water, a lake that didn't exist, a boat that carried him nowhere, the sound of birds above him as he drifted with his eyes closed. In the dream, his father was there, sitting quietly, saying nothing, just rowing, steady, soft. Luke let himself be carried. Han dreamed of flying, not in combat, not under fire, just flying, above Naboo, over Alderaan, whole again, across the gas clouds of Bespin, and through the rings of Yavin. The Falcon moved like silk. The stars parted. And in the co-pilot seat, no one barked orders. No one charted jumps. It was just him. And the sky. Chewbacca dreamed of home. The tall trees. The long howls at dusk. His family's den. The way firelight flickered across fur. He saw the faces of friends. Old ones. Younger ones. Ones long gone. But in the dream, they were all together, cooking, singing, living. And the ache that had been in his chest melted into warmth. Endor held them all, not just the rebels, not just the Ewoks, but the ghosts too, the ones who had walked before them, the ones who had built the paths, the ones who had whispered in the Force and passed on. Their presence was in the trees, in the wind, in the coals of the last fire. Not haunting, watching, with peace. Somewhere the Falcon rested, her engines cooled, her halls empty, her lights dimmed. But even she felt the shift, the quiet, the calm. After everything, there was finally time to simply rest. So now, wherever you are, let yourself be part of this forest. Let the moss welcome your weight. Let the air fill your lungs without tension. Let your fingers relax. Let your jaw soften. Let your eyes drift closed. You are not being chased. You are not expected. You are not required to understand or perform. You are simply here, wrapped in branches, held by the sky, rocked to sleep by the planet. The stars are above you. The fire has faded, and your dreams are waiting. Sleep now, young rebel. The galaxy can wait. The wind on Jakku never truly stopped. It came in waves. It hissed across the sand like a whisper. It tugged at tents, fluttered scrap cloth, and painted swirls into the dunes. But tonight, it was softer. The heat had vanished with the sun. The light was gone, and in its place, only stars. Rey sat at the edge of her fallen walker, the metal beneath her still warm from the day. She wrapped her scarf tighter, pulled her knees to her chest, and looked out over the endless desert. Nothing moved, not a soul in sight, not a single scavenger. No ships overhead, no junkers, no voices, just sand and wind and stars. She reached for her half-rusted dinner tray. What little food she had was already eaten. Only the cup remained half full, with water warmed by her hands. She sipped slowly, carefully, and then just sat. The silence was her friend. It always had been. Not because she liked being alone, but because it never asked anything of her. She didn't have to explain, didn't have to smile, didn't have to fight. She just was. Far off in the distance, the skeleton of a fallen Star Destroyer rose like a broken mountain. The moonlight brushed its sharp edges, outlining the wreckage in silver. Its shadow stretched all the way to Rey's feet. She remembered the first time she climbed it. How big it felt, how scared she was. How proud, too, after she made it to the top. She hadn't known then that it once held stormtroopers, that it once rained fire on planets, that inside thousands had died. To her, it was just metal, just something to be climbed, picked clean, traded for scraps of food. But tonight, it looked different, majestic, ancient, silent. Rey leaned back against the rusted leg of the walker. Her home, her corner of the world. Cracked windows, torn cloth, one small pillow, 2 spoons, and a tally scratched into the wall. One mark for every day. She stopped counting years ago, but still, the wall was full of waiting, of believing, of hoping someone would come back. But not tonight. Tonight wasn't for hoping, or remembering, or aching. Tonight was just for looking up. The stars above her were impossibly clear, like frost on black glass, scattered across the galaxy like stories she didn't know yet. She tried to trace them, One curved like a hook. Another made a triangle. One cluster pulsed ever so slightly. Was that a ship? A satellite? Or just her eyes playing tricks? She didn't care. She imagined they were all watching her, like old friends, sitting beside her in the sand, not speaking, just keeping her company. And Rey pretended not to be alone. She stretched her legs, digging her heels into the cool sand. Her boots were off, her toes pressed against tiny grains, soft and dry. She remembered something, a woman's voice from long ago, saying, "The stars will always be there, even if you're not." Rey didn't know if the memory was real. It could have been a dream, a story she once made up to make the days easier. But it didn't matter, because it felt real. And so, she whispered back to the sky, "I'm still here." In the distance, a small gust rolled over the dunes. It carried with it a melody, not music, not a song, just rhythm. The way the sand moved in waves, the hush of breeze through metal wreckage, the squeak of her flag flapping above the walker's hatch. It sounded like a lullaby made of emptiness. But it wasn't sad. It was soft, soothing, endless. She lay down. The roof of her walker had dents from old battles, but it was solid beneath her. She folded her scarf beneath her head and let her arms rest at her sides. The stars filled her vision. She tried to name them. The bright one to the left, she called it Drifter. The twin lights low on the horizon, they were the Echoes. And the small flickering star, far off and barely visible, that was the Return. She named them every night, sometimes the same, sometimes new, but always hers. And then, she did something she hadn't done in a long time. She closed her eyes, and she made a wish, not out loud, not to be heard, but to be felt. A wish that wasn't desperate, or loud, or broken, just gentle. Something like, "I hope I find someone," not to save her, not to take her away, just someone to sit with her under these stars and not say anything at all. Someone who understood what it meant to grow up waiting, to listen to silence and call it comfort. Someone who saw her without needing a reason. That's all. The wind blew again. It wrapped around her like a blanket, tucked beneath her arms, slipped between the slats of the walker, and Rey breathed it in, slow, deep. She exhaled into the night and imagined her breath joining the sky. She was not force-trained. She didn't know Jedi names. She didn't know she was a legacy. All she knew was how to survive, how to wait, how to feel the world move and stay still. And tonight, that was enough. Somewhere in the sand, a creature burrowed deeper, its rustled movements barely audible. A droid's broken antenna flickered once, then dimmed, and the moon continued its quiet arc above her. Rey didn't stir. She let her body grow heavy, her fingers relaxed, her eyelids fluttered once, then again, and then stilled. The stars didn't twinkle. They just watched. The sand didn't shift. It simply held her weight. And in the space between moments, a peace settled over her. The kind that doesn't promise answers, or change, or rescue. Just rest. Honest, quiet rest. In her dreams, Rey walked across a desert that turned into clouds. She wasn't alone, but no one spoke. She walked beside shadows, that didn't frighten her, that made her feel tall, safe. A voice in the distance, soft, warm, unshaped, called her name once. And she didn't wake. Not yet. Because in her sleep, she smiled. In a galaxy far, far away, the Force breathed. Not in words, not in lightsabers, not in wars, but in stillness, in the spaces between stars, in the pause before a choice, in the quiet hearts of those who listen. It was not fire. It was not storm. It was not something to win or lose. The Force was peace. Across time, it moved gently, from Jedi temples on hidden moons, to quiet huts beneath waterfalls, to open plains where young ones dreamed of more. The Force had always been there, waiting, watching, whispering, not loud, never loud, but real. Some called it balance, some called it destiny. But for those who knew, who truly knew, it was a lullaby. One the galaxy had been humming for generations. In the cradle of Dagobah's mist, Yoda once sat beneath a tree, eyes closed, breathing slow. No lightsaber, no battle, just the hum of frogs, the ripple of still water, and the Force around him. It did not speak in prophecy. It offered no commands, only presence, only now. Ahsoka once stood in a forest of ash. The world had changed. The order was gone, but the Force had not left her. She knelt beside a dying tree and placed her hand on its bark. And for a single moment, she felt everything: the birth of roots, the memory of rain, the breath of wind, the silence of time. And in that silence, peace. In the sands of Tatooine, Luke once watched the sun set. He was just a boy, a dreamer, but the Force saw him, not as a hero, not yet, just as a spark, a presence, a boy on the brink of something great, and still perfectly small. And as the suns dipped low, casting golden light across the desert, the Force hummed in the wind. Be still, be ready. Leia once stood alone in her ship's quarters. The stars outside her window stretched like silk. She had lost much, fought more. But in that moment, she felt her mother, Padme. She couldn't explain how, or why, or when. But in the hush of hyperspace, she closed her eyes and felt arms that had once held her, a voice that had once sung to her. The Force did not erase the pain, but it softened the edges. It said, "You are still whole." Even the ones who strayed, the ones who fell, were not forgotten. Ben Solo once stood in a dark corridor, his mask cracked, his heart heavier than he could carry. He did not speak. He could not. But deep in the marrow of his spirit, the Force whispered, "There is still light." He did not answer, but it stayed with him, even when he turned away. The Force never demanded. It never shouted. It never punished. It waited, gently, even when galaxies burned, even when stars collapsed, even when voices were silenced. It remained. There were temples with no doors, caves with no maps, voices with no mouths, all part of it, all still, all waiting for someone to listen. Not with their ears, but with their heart. The Force flowed through every living thing. A child reaching for their mother, a rebel looking at the sky, a droid choosing to stay behind, a pilot steadying her hands, a Wookiee offering comfort. It did not care for titles or rankings or bloodlines. It moved through kindness. It moved through choice, through every act of quiet courage. And so, as the galaxy spins on, as planets rise and fall, as heroes come and go, the Force still sings. It hums in the rustle of trees on Endor, in the glowing water of Naboo, in the soft snow of Hoth at dawn, in the laughter of children running across grassy hills on Lothal. It is not gone. It never was. Tonight, you've walked many paths. You've seen deserts and stars, villages and battles, dreams and shadows. You've met scavengers and rebels, guardians and ghosts. And now, you return to your breath, to your heart, to your own galaxy of thoughts. And the Force, it comes with you. Let go of the noise. Let go of the past. Let go of the need to understand it all. You don't have to be a Jedi. You don't have to be chosen. You don't even have to believe. Just breathe. Just feel. The Force is not far away. It is here, now, within you. Not as a weapon, not as a mission, but as a lullaby, a hand on your shoulder, a whisper at your side, telling you, you are not alone. You are part of the story, and it's okay to rest. Let the stars blur. Let your body relax. You've made it this far, and there's nowhere else to be but here. Imagine now, a journey without ships, adrift, not through space, but through feeling. The Force carries you, not forward, not backward, just inward. You drift first to Achto, where waves crash gently against ancient stones. The Jedi Temple, mossy, worn, rises from the sea like a forgotten dream. The porgs nest quietly in the cliffs. Luke's silhouette stands in memory, watching the horizon. But tonight, no one trains. No one fights. The island is still, a sacred breath, a reminder, even the old can rest. The wind lifts you upward, softer now, lighter. And you find yourself on Endor, not during war, not during celebration, but in peace. The trees are tall, but not imposing. Sunlight drips through the canopy like liquid gold. Ewoks hum lullabies in their village, tiny drums echoing faintly in the distance. One child climbs onto a hut's edge, looks up at the stars beyond the branches, and smiles. Even here, after battle, after fire, joy remains. The Force carries you again, over silver lakes, through forgotten nebulae, and into the clouds of Bespin. The city floats like a sleeping thought. There are no alarms tonight. No carbonite chambers, just mist. Soft, blue light. A worker droid hums quietly along the catwalk. A technician leans against a railing, eyes closed, letting the wind kiss his face. Above him, gas storms swirl like brushstrokes on a painting, a lullaby in motion. On Coruscant, the capital sleeps. Even here, where billions walk by day and neon flashes by night, there are pockets of silence. On a rooftop garden, a child in a sleeping robe gazes upward through a transparent steel dome. Their caregiver hums softly, tucking them in beneath a woven blanket. Far above, starfighters patrol in quiet loops, not for war, just protection. A city that never stops, but even it slows, for dreams. You float further now, to Naboo, where waterfalls pour like liquid moonlight and fields bloom in soft pastels. The lakes ripple in rhythm with the wind. Padme's childhood garden is still intact. Somewhere nearby, a woman with eyes like hers tends the roses. And the palace, no longer echoing with politics, but laughter. A picnic blanket rests under the trees. A painting half finished on a canvas nearby. The Force smiles here. It remembers love. Now, a shift to Mustafar, the fire planet, but not in rage, not tonight. The lava glows dimly, not erupting, just glowing. The castle stands quiet, abandoned now. But even this place, once ruled by pain, has softened. A single green vine crawls up through the cracks, its leaf glowing faintly in the ash. Even here, hope dares to grow. You move to Kashyyyk, where the trees are as tall as mountains. Birds call in the canopy, but their tones are sleepy. Wookiees rest in their hammocks. Families share stories by dim firelight. Somewhere, Chewbacca's voice hums an old family song, a lullaby passed down, long before the Clone Wars, long before the Empire. Time does not erase comfort. It only waits to return it. To Lothal now. The stars overhead are clearer here. The ghost of a Jedi mural glows faintly on an old stone wall. A memory of heroes, of Ezra, of Sabine, of the hope that shaped a galaxy. The wind blows through the tall golden grass. A loth cat curls around your legs. Its purr is steady, comforting. Even here, the Force lives, not in temples, but in whispers, in animals, in art. You drift through a sea of stars now. No planet, just sky, endless, open. The Force around you is like breath. It does not need to be explained. It does not need to be controlled. It is not a trick, not a tool. It just is. And somewhere in this space, a voice, not one, but many, a chorus of Jedi who once stood tall, of caretakers who never asked for titles, of rebels who never gave up, and children who dared to dream, all singing the same message. Slow, calm, clear. You are not alone. You are part of the Force. You are enough. The voice becomes quieter now, like a whisper behind your eyes. You've traveled far tonight. You've walked with Rey through the sand, stood with Luke on the cliffs, heard Leia's echo in the stars, and listened to the silence of old Jedi. Now, rest. The galaxy is still. Every sun slows, every moon sighs, every star softens. Let your hands relax. Let your face smooth. Let your breath follow the rhythm of drifting comets and lazy satellites. There's no more story to chase, no prophecy to solve, no war to fight. Just quiet, just the Force. Let it cradle you, like Yoda once cradled the light, like Ahsoka once stood beneath starlight, like Obi-Wan, the moment he chose to let go. There's no sound now, but breath. No light, but dream. The Force is with you, always. And as the final note of this lullaby fades, you're safe. You're warm. And the story is done. But the dream is just beginning. You're dreaming now, but not your dreams alone. These are the Force's dreams, memories, visions, echoes across space and time. Some you've seen, some you've only felt. Each one flickers like a star in sleep. Let them pass before you, softly, like lanterns on water. The air is cold, but not harsh. You step into a crystal cave beneath the snowy surface of Ilum. The ice glows in shades of gentle blue and white. Every footstep echoes like a bell. There's no danger here, no trial, only beauty. You walk slowly through a tunnel of light. Kyber crystals pulse softly from the walls, singing in high, delicate tones you feel more than hear. You reach your hand out, not to take, just to feel. And the crystal nearest you begins to glow. Not bright, just warm. Your breath slows. You sit down on the floor and listen. For a long time, you just listen. You are in the Dune Sea, but it's not midday. It's dusk. The heat has faded, the sand is cool, and beside you, a gentle bantha. Its fur is thick and soft, its eyes calm and patient. You climb onto its back, and it begins to walk. There is no hurry. You ride across golden dunes as twin suns lower behind the horizon. The sky turns pink, then violet, then deep blue. You lean forward, resting against the bantha's shoulder. The air smells of dust and old stories. You feel small, but never alone. You are barefoot in the fields of Naboo. The grass is tall and dewy. Your fingers trail through it as you walk. The sun has just set, and the fireflies have come, hundreds of them, floating golden lights, drifting slowly between the trees. You follow them to the edge of a lake. The water is still. The stars above reflect on the surface like a second galaxy. You sit at the shoreline and dip your feet in. Somewhere nearby, music plays softly. A stringed instrument, a melody you don't recognize, but feel you've always known. The fireflies gather close, and one lands on your open hand. It pulses once, then flies away. You are not on the forest floor of Kashyyyk. You are high above, in the trees. You are inside a round wooden hut with soft woven mats and hanging shells that chime in the breeze. There is a Wookiee mother rocking a child in her arms. Her fur is dark, her movements slow. She hums, a song older than memory, a lullaby without words, only meaning. The baby Wookiee yawns, his eyes blink closed. Outside the hut, the trees sway, the wind sings harmony, and you lie down on a fur mat, eyes growing heavy. The mother doesn't stop humming, and you drift. You walk through endless rows of glowing holobooks. The Jedi archives are empty, but not silent. You hear footsteps from long ago, murmured voices of students, laughter echoing from a distant corridor. The air smells faintly of stone and parchment and memory. You pass a table where a youngling once practiced telekinesis. The training ball still floats, trembling softly as if remembering. You pass the reading corner where Master Yaddle once read to a group of initiates. Their cushions remain. So does the silence. And then, a soft blue light. You turn. A figure stands near the window, cloaked, kind. You can't see their face, but they nod. And in that moment, you understand something you never did before. Not in words, just knowing. You bow, and the vision fades. The Millennium Falcon is still. No smuggling run, no hyperdrive, panic, just quiet. You step inside. The hum of the ship is a slow heartbeat beneath your feet. Chewbacca snores faintly in the back. Leia's old blanket is folded on the seat. Rey's staff leans gently against the wall. You lie down in one of the bunks. It smells of oil, leather, and shared adventure. Above you, etched into the durasteel, are names carved with knives and pens over the years. Some you know, some you don't. You trace your fingers over one name, Han, and smile. The lights dim automatically. The ship adjusts its temperature to your body. And for the first time in a long time, you feel safe in motion, even when standing still. She stands alone on a snowy cliff. Ahsoka, her eyes closed. 2 lightsabers resting beside her in the snow. She's not meditating, not fighting, just being. Above her, the moon glows full. The wind picks up, carrying voices from far away. Anakin, Obi-Wan, Rex. They are not speaking, but she hears them, and she breathes in. She breathes out. She opens her eyes, and in them, there is sadness, and there is peace. The snow swirls, and the vision dissolves. Grogu sits by a pond. A single frog egg floats in front of him, but he doesn't eat it. Not tonight. He watches it gently bob in the water, the little embryo inside glowing faintly. The fire beside him crackles. Din's helmet rests beside the flames, just out of frame. Grogu coos softly. He reaches out, and the egg floats higher, then slowly lands again, unharmed. He claps once, pleased, and curls into his coat, sleeping, tiny, peaceful, strong. You are back on Tatooine, but it's not the end. It's the beginning. You stand on a hill. The desert stretches before you, golden, endless. The twin suns begin to rise, not harshly, gently, like eyelids opening. And as the light touches your face, you feel every journey before this. Luke's hope, Anakin's fall, Shmi's love, Rey's search, all of it, part of this new dawn. The Force wraps around your shoulders like a cloak and says, "It is your time to dream now." There is no planet here, only stars. But somehow, a temple floats in the void. Its steps are made of moonlight. Its pillars rise like silver fire. You climb slowly. Each step dissolves behind you. But you're never afraid. At the top, a pool of still water. You lean forward, and instead of your reflection, you see everyone. Jin, Finn, Mando, Grogu, Leia, Yoda, Ezra, Ahsoka, Kanan, Ben, Padme, Anakin, all of them. Their eyes are closed, their faces calm. You place your hand on the surface. The pool glows, and in its warmth, you fall asleep. Not all Jedi drew their sabers. Not all stood on battlefields. Not all led clones. Not all faced the Sith. Some simply served. In silence. In peace. Their names were never carved into war monuments. Their stories were never told in Senate halls. But the Force remembers them. And tonight, so will you. Let us visit them. One by one. Her name was Master Sari Indu. She lived alone in the high canopies of Felucia, in a wooden hut grown from the trees themselves. She wore no armor, no battle robes, only soft cloth dyed in deep forest green. Each morning she tended her garden, not a combat training ground, but an actual garden. A hanging web of blossoms, herbs, and glowing fungi, woven through the branches above. She spoke to her plants. She sang to them. And the Force sang back. Her job was simple: grow healing ingredients for Jedi healers. She never left the forest. Not even when the Clone Wars began. "I serve the galaxy by tending life," she once said. And what is more Jedi than that? One day her garden outgrew even her. And the trees, moved by her kindness, built a canopy over her roof that bloomed with light even at night. When Order 66 came, no clone battalion arrived. The forest kept her hidden. She lived for many years after that, quiet and content. She never lit her saber, Monty, but her legacy still glows in every Jedi healing route ever used. Toma Sil was born on a planet with no name, but from a young age, he only wanted to look up. He studied star maps before he could walk. When he arrived at the Jedi Temple, he barely passed lightsaber training, but he could chart constellations blindfolded. He became an archivist, then a cartographer, then just Toma. He kept to the spire at the top of the temple, surrounded by old books, astrolabes, and glowing holomaps. No one disturbed him much. Even the High Council called him the quiet one upstairs. But every night he added a new dot to the great Jedi star map, not for war, not for missions, just for wonder. One of the stars he charted led Ahsoka to safety. Another later guided Grogu's ship to a hidden planet. Toma never knew, but the Force did, and perhaps so did the stars. In the Jedi Temple, there was a basement. Few ever went there. Even fewer knew who ran it. Her name was Jedi Tala Wen. She called herself the Keeper of Lost Things. She didn't mean weapons or tech. She meant belongings, a fallen Padawan's flute, an orphan's blanket left behind, a clone sketchpad from Camino. She kept them all, labeled, cataloged, respected. When a Jedi fell in battle, she made sure their family received something to remember them by. A robe, a diary, a carved stone from their first meditation. No one ordered her to do this. She just did. The temple staff said she always looked tired, but kind. One night, Obi-Wan came to her quietly. He placed something in her hands. Anakin's childhood toolkit. "Keep it safe," he said. She nodded and added it to a drawer called "For the Ones We Couldn't Hold." Master Rai Niv didn't speak, not once in 50 years. He taught with gestures, with presence, with the Force. His students said his silence made them listen more deeply. He taught only one lesson: feel, then act. No form drills, no force throws, just sensing. Every year his students built wind chimes and hung them from the temple's courtyard trees. No two chimes ever sounded alike. When you walked through that grove, you heard the Force, not in power, but in motion. Rai Niv passed away during the night. His body vanished like all great Jedi, but his grove still sings. Even now, long after the temple has fallen, she was born Mirialan. She joined the Order at age 9 late, but her gift was rare. She could etch the Force itself into shape. Her name, Vexa Or. She became a specialist in holocron design, but not just architecture. She painted them, not with brushes, with light. Every holocron she made had color, swirling auroras inside their crystalline walls, tiny flowers, galaxies. Information, she said, should be beautiful. Mace Windu once called her a waste of resources. But Yoda kept 3 of her holocrons on his shelf. One of them played only music, soft flute melodies. Vexa disappeared after the Jedi Purge. But years later, Ezra Bridger opened one of her holocrons on Lothal. It whispered only a lullaby. He fell asleep to it that night and kept it close from then on. Every Jedi passed him. Few remembered his name. Jalitu, old, stooped, his hands always dirty. He tended the rooftop garden above the archives. A small patch of soil, 10 feet across, facing the Coruscant skyline. He grew only one thing: white lilies. No one asked why. One day a youngling asked him, "Master Jolly, why not grow something useful?" He smiled. "These are useful. They remind Jedi they are alive." That day, he gave that youngling a lily. The boy planted it in his room. That youngling was Caleb Doom, later known as Kanan Jarrus. Years later, Kanan would do the same for Ezra, a lily on a starship, a reminder of peace. Yali never held a saber, but every bloom was a light of its own. There was one Jedi no one knew, because she only listened. She sat in meditation rooms, empty ones, dusty ones, waiting. And when someone entered, tired, angry, grieving, she opened her eyes and listened. No lectures, no codes, no rebukes, just her presence. People cried in front of her, laughed in front of her, said things they'd never say in council chambers. Then they left. She never told her name, but many claimed to have met her. And those who did always said the same thing: she helped. And she didn't even say a word. Every night, the creche, the Jedi nursery, was filled with chattering younglings, excited, afraid, restless. And then came Master Tolu. She sat in the center of the room and sang. Not words, just tones. Like the wind through a canyon. She told stories too, about Jedi who grew trees, who sang to crystals, who dreamed in the Force. Her favorite story was about a Jedi who became a star. The children always asked for that one. "Tell us about the Jedi star." She would smile and begin again. Once there was a Jedi who didn't fight, but they glowed so brightly that the Force gave them a place in the sky. One by one, the younglings fell asleep. Lights dimmed, breath slowed. Even the Force quieted. Master Tolu kept singing. Long after they had drifted, most Jedi gave answers, but not Dagobah Rin. She only asked, "What does the Force taste like to you? When you hold your saber, what do you feel afraid to cut? What part of you do you not show others?" She asked without judgment, without recording anything, just wondering. She kept journals, not of facts, of feelings. Years later, when her temple was raided, stormtroopers found no weapons, only shelves of handwritten notebooks filled with dreams, hopes, and questions. A trooper opened one. It asked, "Who are you without your orders?" He closed it and didn't burn it. He wore no robes, only a poncho, and carried a wooden flute. He walked from planet to planet, never staying long, never interfering. He played on rooftops, in alleyways, in meadows. Sometimes people left credits, sometimes just food. Children followed him, animals curled near him. And occasionally, once in a long while, someone sat beside him and said, "I'm lost." He would play a song. And when it ended, they weren't anymore. He never said he was a Jedi, but every bird flew near him. Every storm avoided him. Every act of kindness bloomed after him. When he died, his flute disappeared. Some say the wind still carries his song,